Welcome back to the Rules of Engagement. Before we jump into analyzing game number 2, let me remind you guys, we do daily content here at MLG. Every day we have several hours of Starcraft content. If you miss it one day, you can always catch it in 1080p quality for free on YouTube, youtube.com/official. MLGSC2. Also, we have all of our games from the Winter Championships. You want to see the world's best players. You want to see Flash vs. Life. You want to see, CJ Hero. You want to see Marine King. You want to see Jockchi. You want to see MVP. All these guys played in the MLG Winter Championships and more. Catch all those games as well for free, 1080p quality at YouTube, youtube.com/official. MLGSC2, your source for all StarCraft 2 content. I'm going on to game number 2 between Sase and Goswser. A couple things I want to talk about here are going to be early pressure versus 2-base Zerg. We took that look at Goswser's build last game. We could take a look at how Sase adapts to it in the second game. Talk about advantage of early speedlings, and then also the importance of map vision. So going into this game, we're going to take a look at Sase's build. And as we go forward in this, we're going to notice he's, of course, getting a plus in weapons, and he's chrono boosting Warp Gate. And he's going ahead and getting extra gateways. He's probably going to get, we can see here, this pylon here, he just told a probe to move over here. He's going to shortly add several more gateways as well to finish up around at the same time that Warp Gate does, right? So he's looking to put on a lot of early pressure with 5 gates, plus in weapons, and Warp Gate. Now, he doesn't know for sure how his opponent opened, right? But he knows that there wasn't a fast third base because he sent a probe down there. It saw that there wasn't a third base early on. And so he knows it's some type of 2-base play. And he might make assumptions based on knowing Goswser's style. That Goswser very rarely does these hardcore cheese builds, and they typically don't work against Protoss anymore with the availability to get the Mothership Core now. That he's probably doing what he did last game, protecting for the Swarmos and Infestors. And while Sase did win that last game, he won it more off of Goswser misplaying the base race and forgetting to kill that third base. And he's probably thinking, oh, on Daybreak it's harder to run around a map. It's a little bit scarier. I don't feel as confident going into that, so let's try a different opening instead of letting him get to those Swarmos as much as he wants. So this pressure build you do with gateway units, right? If they take a fast third base, it's designed to either A, force them to build a lot of roaches, cut their drones, or B, kill the third base. Against a 2-base tech build, it's a little bit different, right? So going forward, he still is going to want to put on the pressure, but instead of just saying, oh, I want you to build a whole bunch of roaches, he still does want him to build either roaches or a ton of speedlings. He wants the Zerg to build those units instead of the Infestors, the Mutalisks, the Swarmos, because off a 2-base economy, Zerg is going to have a hard time both getting units to beat this early Zealot force, right? Especially all these Zealots here. Zerg is going to have a hard time both beating this and getting all their tech units at the same time because you only have 2-base economy. It's very hard to do both. The other goal is to keep the Zerg on their side of the map. When a Zerg's busy on their side of the map, you slow their tech down, and you actually have a third base going up behind this pressure that is ideally pretty much on par with the Zerg. So you're even in an economy with a Zerg player. In fact, exactly dead even worker count, which doesn't happen too often in a PvZ. So that's the goal of the pressure. You prevent the Zerg from really utilizing the tech very well. We can see there still hasn't been any Infestors starting quite yet because he's busy clearing up the Zealots. Meanwhile, you prevent the Zerg from canceling your third base. It's kind of a 2-hitter. And going forward from here, we see Sase did that very well, right? Behind this, he's kind of doing well in tech. He's got a Robo done. He's getting blinked. He's almost at 1-1 upgrades. He's even in bases with the Zerg player, and he's still getting more drone kills, right? This Mothership Core now is up to 6 kills. It is going to be taken out eventually, but getting a lot of damage done here. Ahead significantly in the worker count. And the Zerg player's tech is just starting to kick in right now. So one thing we want to talk about is, okay, it seems like Zerg on 2-base can't really stop this gateway pressure because they don't have the economy to build a ton of roaches and speedings to just slam that early pressure, right? They can't trade that well against it because they don't have the overwhelming unit count because of the smaller larva and economy. But the one thing that's very important when you're Zerg, we're going to back this up a tiny bit and talk about the Zerg side of playing this. And that's all about using the early speedings. Remember, for a Zerg player doing a 2-base tech, you don't just have the faster layer, you have very fast speedings, right? So number one is ideally you don't want to give your opponent that watchtower. But the main thing is you want to both delay your opponent's attack and make sure they have to be defensive. They have to keep all the units back on the defense to take their third base. So we're going to do this through Goswser's perspective, right? And he's setting out the first little group of speedings. It would have been nice to have this group maybe be like 2 to 4 more speedings. Yes, it means that you don't have as many drones, but Just speeding force, number 1, it saw the probe coming out. And then number 2, he can go check on third base. Right, so he's going to send here, he's going to send 1 speeding to keep an eye on third base. He's going to send the rest of the squad down here to make sure that he doesn't let any proxy pylons get up. And that's what's so important about early speedings. You have to delay their push by not letting any proxy pylons get up. So right now, he sees this probe. Ideally, he'd have 8 speedings in production. You know, it's not going to kill him to get 8 more speedings. He has to get them anyway eventually. And if he can stop the pylons early, which you can do easily because there's nothing to protect it, right? If you look at the unit count, there's 2 zealots, right? If you had 8 speedlings, 8 plus these 4 would easily take down the 2 zealots and he cancel any pylons before they finish. You want to force your opponent to do their first warp in at home, then use that warp in as it pushes out to protect the pylons if you have early speedlings, ideally. Unfortunately, Goswser, I think what happened here is he missed an Overlord. We can see here he doesn't have the supply. So even though he has the larva and the resources, missing an Overlord costs him a lot more than it normally would, because in this case, not only does he have a harder time, he can't kill this pylon, right? So as we see here, this pylon finishes because there's no speedings in play and all these zealots get warped in. Now, he does a smart thing, which is prioritize killing this pylon, right? He sends these speedings straight around and prioritizes killing this pylon to prevent any additional Protoss reinforcements. But if he stopped this in the first place, not only would his attack hit later, but he would have additional speedings instead of having to defend these zealots right now, right? These speedings could be across the map. They could be heading across the map right now, and this third base could not get up, right? If he sent these 5 speedings across the map right now. But unfortunately, they were stuck on pylon killing duty, and his reinforcing speedings are stuck killing these zealots that warped in. And that is why that Sase gets this base up, right? He could get it up with just a single zealot warp in because Goswser was so busy trying to defend at home. The reason he was so busy at home was simply because he got supply blocks, so he couldn't stop that pylon from getting up that fast in the game. So going forward, you know, it's going to kind of even out. A little more harassed by Sase. Goswser tries to see if he can get damage done, but there's too many cannons, and he's like, oh no, it's too late. I'm going to have to play a game going forward, playing from a little bit behind. Now, the one advantage he has is a tech advantage going forward, right? He has that tech advantage. And one thing that he could potentially do that you almost never see anymore is he could even do an infested Terran Tommy. If you look at the situation right now, Sase has almost no units because he spent them on harass, and behind us he's trying to attack, right? In about a minute, he's going to have an insanely strong army, but it's going to be mostly gateway units. And sometimes you could try to land an infested Terran timing before the Colossus comes out. And if you combine, you know, he has 17 speedings now, he'd have to rally in more, right? So you have to use all this 15 larva, would have to be 30 speedings. If you combine that with the current 7 infestors he has, where are those guys? Here they are. And he just threw a whole ton of infested Terrans at the third base, maybe he could kill it. It's unclear. It would be a risky move because he doesn't have Burrow. So the Stalkers could chase down the infestors if his army died. The Mothership Core might have enough energy for Photon Overcharge. That could help a little bit against infested Terrans. And infested Terrans, generally, a lot of people don't use them anymore because they don't get the upgrades. For a Tommy like this, it wouldn't matter, but it's just kind of psychologically you're used to thinking them as not as good as they used to be. Also, the eggs have a little bit less life. Although, again, for timing like this, it probably wouldn't really be a big difference. So going forward, he can play defensively because he wants to get to that Swarm Host Infestor combination that worked so well from last game when he was able to force engagements. Sase, of course, is going to do the standard counter to that, which is going to be double Robo Colossi. Going forward, they're both going to, of course, Sase is going to go ahead and take his 4th extra fast because he knows he's ahead and his opponent has a small unit count. Ghost is going to try to turtle out. If he can turtle out long enough, he can get the Tuner Fruit Death Ball and trade very well off the back of Locust and Fungal Gross. But now we get to the point where what's really important here in this stage of the game is map vision, right? Goswser's army is so frail if there's no Locust summon, right? If Stalkers blink on top of these guys when there's no Locust, they'll pick them all off. The Infestors can Fungal Growth those Stalkers before they get close enough, theoretically, but that means that he has to know the Stalkers are coming. If the Stalkers get to blink on top of the Infestors in bulk and the Zerg's not looking, he could lose 5, 6, 7 Infestors before they can cast their Fungal Growth. So as a Zerg player, it's extremely important you have that forward map vision. Right, so if we pause it here and look at Goswser, he's got this a little bit of vision with Creep here, and he's got some Locusts giving him vision there. But Locusts aren't going to be permanent, so ideally what you have is you actually use burrowed Zerglings, right? If you look at Sase's vision, he had a Zealot here, but then it got taken out by Zerglings. But his Zerglings didn't stay in this location, right? Even just a single burrowed Zergling is much more difficult to dislodge than a lot of other units because your opponent has to first know it's there and then send the observer. If their whole army goes there, yes, you'll lose the one Zergling, but you'll know where their army is. Right? And it's so important to know where their army is because coming into an engagement, you have to be in position. So right now, he actually found the army with the Locust, but he's not in position, right? His Swarmhosts are, half of them are coming this way, half of them are coming down. So right here, knowing that the army is there, this is when you need to back away and get back in position because you have to have that time before an engagement. If you get stuck in a bad engagement because you don't know exactly when the army is going to hit you, you get stuck like this, where you have a few Swarm hosts sending their Locusts, but it's only 8. Those 8 get killed very fast. Your other Locusts are kind of trying to get the ramp. By the time those Locusts get up the ramp, what's happened? You've lost all your Infestors because they also ran the wrong way instead of back. And now your Swarm hosts are fighting alone, but they're also fighting alone from multiple angles. So then you lose other 4 Swarm hosts here. They get taken out. The Corruptors are getting taken out. You're killing some Colossi, but it's not worth it to trade. It's basically a bad trade. Look at units lost tab. You can see here 9,000 to 5,000 when ideally the Zerg army is more cost efficient with this combination. So we need to stop it right there with that type of units lost and the 4 bases behind this. Protoss can easily transition to whatever they want. They can do mass air. They can keep pushing forward and probably kill one of the Zerg bases. In fact, from this angle, the Protoss could just keep pushing diagonally up and go straight to the Zerg natural. So there's a lot the Protoss can do to win from this position. Sase goes ahead and wins that game. And the important thing to note there is, 1, if you're a Zerg player, you're going to 2 base tech route, you have to use those speedings early on to make sure your opponent can't attack and take a third at the same time. There's no way you can let them get away with that. And you have to do that because what you can do is you have enough speeding so that if they want to put a pylon out on the map, they have to escort it with a significant gateway count. And if that significant gateway count is out on the map defending the pylon, that means that they can't be back defending a third base. So one of those 2 things will be weak. You take out whichever one's weak, and you're gonna, you're not gonna necessarily be ahead, but you'll progress to your ideal mid game at a timely pace and not end up behind from the early pressure. And then also, in every matchup, it seemed especially bad here for the Zerg because he was using units that are very positional dependent. They have to be in the right position to be effective, but every unit is somewhat positional dependent. Every unit wants to be, can be slightly more effective if they're positioned in a great concave, if they're all attacking at the same time, etc. So in the late game, when the engagements are very important, make sure that you have at least a 3-second warning before a battle happens, right? What we saw there is Goswser didn't have that warning. His Infestors got caught off guard. They got taken out by the Blink Stalkers, and that was it, right? If he had a 3-second warning, he could have grouped his Swarmos together. He could have had the Infestors back and spread out so they could hit the Fungals better. He would have been ready to hit the Fungals, so he would have hit the Fungals before losing his Infestors. It would have been a lot different if he was, had a 3-second heads up that a battle was going to occur. Anyways, that wraps up the analysis on game number 2. We'll take a short break and be right on to game number 3.